Any organization populated with problem solvers who have also been empowered to actually solve problems is an organization with tremendous potential to remain sustainable, growth-oriented, and in business. For this episode, I have invited Nisha Patel to be the guest. She is one of the people whose face lights up when she talks about problem solving at work. Welcome back to Brain Chatter, where we listen past the daily noise and explore topics at the intersection of leadership, workplace culture, profit, and sustainability. I'm your host, Derek Brown. Today's episode is how to find, hire, develop, and empower proactive problem solvers. Nisha, welcome to Brain Chatter.
Derek, thank you for having me as your guest and for the opportunity to share what I know from my own experiences with your listeners.
Thank you very much. First, the word problem usually has a negative connotation. For many, its top association is with another word, stress. But not everyone chooses to see problems that way, and you are one of those people. And I think this is summed up well in this quote from former U.S. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. A stumbling block to the pessimist is a stepping stone for the optimist. My first question for you, Nisha, is how do you let problems be motivators and fun challenges to solve rather than stressors to be avoided and then lamented?
Well, Derek, problems come in various forms. They can range from things that require fixing or improving to unmet needs or sources of dissatisfaction. I work in an academic medical center, and for us, problems often manifest as deviations from standards and expectations, but they can also be opportunities to change and innovate. If we look around, problems are around us everywhere. How we approach them, whether it's as a stressor or a motivator, depends on our perspectives. Personally, instead of viewing problems as something negative or stress-inducing, I shift my perspective and try to see them as opportunities to flex my brain muscles and make things better. For me, the driving force behind problem solving is my passion for helping people and creating environments where they can thrive. This intrinsic desire to develop myself and to make a difference in people's world really allows me to see problems not as something being done to me, but an opportunity for me to do something to others. That being said, let's be realistic here. I am no Pollyanna. I understand that problem solving can be challenging and stressful. There are times, many times, where I felt drained by the demands of finding solutions. On the other hand, there have been a lot of times where the problem is just so silly that I can't help but laugh. I mean, who would have thought that a paper jam could bring an entire office of C-suite professionals to a standstill? Unfortunately, it's happened more than once. Ultimately, Derek, problems are a part of our life, and how we perceive and approach them makes all the difference.
Well, that is sage counsel. And let me go back to that Eleanor Roosevelt quote. Problems really are opportunities. They are opportunities for entrepreneurs to build businesses and wealth when they solve problems, and for problem solvers who effectively tackle problems inside of major organizations. The reputation of being an effective problem solver can be career catapults, projecting someone far past their competition to the forefront of additional opportunities just because of a proven track record of problem solving. So why do you think more people don't look at problems, both small and large, in this way as opportunities?
For some individuals, it is simply what we call problem blindness, meaning they don't either see the problem or think it's inevitable, so they don't even bother. Then there's individuals who may not be confident in their problem solving abilities. They may lean into other strengths, and this is something that I absolutely support. But for those who have the problem solving interests and skills, workplace culture may be the barrier. Sometimes employees are scared to fail or make things worse. People may avoid problem solving because they think that taking risk or proposing new ideas will result in failure, which may then lead to a negative performance evaluation or even impact their job security. Some individuals are unclear about what their role is. When there's ambiguity regarding who is responsible for problem solving or when the lines of authority are blurred, individuals may be uncertain about their role in addressing or even bringing up problems they've identified. This leads to a lack of ownership. And other times, individuals are simply tunneling, meaning there are time constraints or high workload, something many of us can understand. And being overwhelmed by the existing workload leaves very little time and energy for problem solving effectively. The truth is, we all have the capacity to be great problem solvers, but our mindset, willingness to learn, and the environment in which we are in are key factors in how engaged and successful we will be in our problem solving.
Those are great insights, Nisha. So, who is a highly effective problem solver that you've interacted with or worked with firsthand that you admire particularly? And what is it about that person that makes them good at what they do?
Such a great question. There are three individuals that immediately come to mind, one of which is now the CEO of UAB Health System. They all share several qualities. They are thoughtful in their analysis, strategic in their solutions, confident during their implementation, and great communicators throughout the entire process. Oh, and I should mention, they are all women. Now, I'm not saying men cannot be great problem solvers, but in my experience, it has been these women that have served as role models and advocates. But back to your question, what makes them so good at what they do? Well, for starters, they have a superpower that a lot of people overlook. They are great listeners. They don't jump to conclusions or try to solve the problem without first understanding what happened, how it happened, and why it happened. And it's not just their listening that makes them effective problem solvers. They also have a keen sense of direction. It's almost like an internal compass. They know where their team and organization is going, and they lead the way. This is especially important when there are multiple solutions on the table. They focus on where the organization is going and less on pleasing a person or a set of people. However, these women are deeply relational, and they utilize these relationships to gain invaluable insight and garner buy-in. I will say they surprise me every day, and I am very grateful to have such great role models to learn from.
Well, I know that they're grateful to have you associated with them as well. Let me pause for just a moment and do a swerve and introduce you to anyone listening to this podcast. Nisha is the Director of Wellness and Administration at UAB Medicine. That's the University of Alabama at Birmingham Medicine, a position she has held for over 2 years and in which she's been critical in helping establish the Office of Wellness. And prior to that, one of her roles was as Chief of Staff for the Dean of Heersink School of Medicine and CEO of the expansive UAB Health System. I should point out that UAB is one of Alabama's two largest employers, and the Heersink School of Medicine nears the top 20 in national funding from the National Institutes of Health. That's a big deal. She has an undergraduate degree from Middle Tennessee State University, an MBA from UAB, and a Master's of Healthcare Administration from UAB. She has also gone through Lean Six Sigma Green Belt for healthcare certification and completed her certification in mentoring and coaching. She is an alumni of Momentum Upward and is currently working toward becoming a board-certified coach. Nisha, is it okay if we first talk about that chief of staff role?
Absolutely. But Derek, to be completely honest, I did not know what I was getting myself into when I accepted the position as chief of staff to the dean. But looking back now, it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my career and a position that I would truly consider again in the future, simply because I thrived in that complexity and chaos. My specific titles during these 3.5 years were administrative director, and as my responsibilities expanded, I was then promoted to be the executive director of operations and administration. However, as you mentioned, I did have the functional title as chief of staff.
At one point, my aunt was an executive assistant to a school superintendent in a county in Alabama, and on her desk was a little sign that read, "Do you want to talk to the boss or with the person who has the answers?" Clearly, she and the superintendent had a good relationship where humor was welcome. Does that sound familiar to you?
It's my daily life. Yes. Staff are the ones who make things happen, the ones who make the office go round. Now, the leaders are key for strategy and decision making, but in terms of execution, it's the staff that are critical. And it is important to recognize that often the people with the answers, the people with the access, are the ones who are quietly working behind the scenes. But Derek, don't overlook us because we're always looking and observing.
Absolutely. A chief assistant, whether that be an executive assistant like my aunt was, or a chief of staff or another role, holds a tremendous amount of influence. Some of that influence is simply because of being the gatekeeper, but the rest of it is earned. A very large percentage of it is earned. And earning that influence comes by solving as many problems as possible before they land on the desk of the boss, or after the problems land there, but then ricochet back off that desk onto the desk of the chief of staff or the chief assistant, whatever that role may be. If you don't mind, tell me about some of the ways you were able to proactively problem solve in that chief of staff role.
It's simple. I listened and I observed. For example, I would schedule meetings regularly with our senior leadership team to better understand what they were working on, their top priorities, and any major obstacles that they were facing. I also rounded on our staff to gain a better understanding of their challenges and frustrations. And I observed the dean and those interacting with him. This may have been in meetings, presentations, or even hallway interactions, just to kind of garner some information on what people were talking about and what they found important. This listening allowed me to connect dots and tease out major problems and identify opportunities. This is often before any problems had a chance to even manifest. In my experiences, I have learned that in many times problems are preventable. And in my support roles, I try to look ahead or upstream to avoid problems when possible.
I'd like to pull in what I think is some good information from a different podcast on an adjacent topic. The Wall Street Journal's As We Work podcast had a specific episode titled The Value of Being Invaluable at Work. It is an interview with former Oracle Software Vice President Liz Wiseman. And by the way, she's now a best-selling author. I'd like us to discuss a few of her insights, and the first point she makes is that a person who does their best to make themselves indispensable is someone who thinks they have job security by trying to keep all the keys to the kingdom to themselves. In other words, they hoard particular relationships, keep secret certain knowledge about software or processes or machines or skill sets and information, maybe even a person who hoards actual keys to doors. Maybe they force others to go through them for all sorts of things people would not go through a single person at other organizations. Well, you know where I'm going here. The list goes on. But she points out that what they actually do, what this person who sees themselves as actually indispensable does, is to make it nearly impossible for a further rise in the organization. Because it would be such a headache to replace this person who has built all these walls around the information they have or the access they have or whatever it may be. Ms. Wiseman suggests that the much better option is to be invaluable. Then she explains the difference. But before we proceed, share with me your insights about people who take this negative, indispensable route.
This is a really good distinction. And I feel for the people who believe they need to hoard information. Not only do they lack confidence, but they tend to live in survival mode, which is not a great place to be. And they're cheating themselves out of growth. People who have positioned themselves to be indispensable are overlooked because they haven't planned for their succession, meaning they haven't trained those under them. A great leader to me is somebody who plans for their succession. You realize that the task that you have been hired to do can be done by others, but you're being kept on by the organization for your information, for your relationship, and for your loyalty. Additionally, individuals who feel that they need to be indispensable often burn themselves out. I see this more often than I'd like. Because when you are the only one with the metaphorical keys, you can never take a true break. Striving to be indispensable comes from the human need of wanting to be needed, appreciated, and ultimately secure. But Derek, I agree with Ms. Wiseman. There are other ways to show your value.
Something else Ms. Wiseman says is that the critical skill of this century is how fast someone can figure out what they do not know and learn about it. She says that what we already know is that managers love having someone on their team point out something and this person can just go figure it out. A go-to person for problem solving. Would you agree that this is a critical skill of this century? And how do people become that person?
I'm not sure I'm convinced that it's a critical skill of the century, but I do believe it is critical to have some people on your team who can do this very well. But all of us can train this muscle and grow this ability. How? Well, it's a combination of things. So be resourceful, whether it's embracing and using technology and reaching out to your network, know where to go. Be confident. This is not necessarily even in yourself, but that the continued effort and time invested will result in some success. Hone your critical thinking skills so that you know how to analyze information and evaluate it, which will help you present it and communicate it to others. And lastly, have a growth mindset. In fact, I might actually argue that a growth mindset is the critical characteristic of this century. When you are open to expanding your knowledge, adapting to new things, and continuously improving yourselves, technically, you can be anything, right?
That's a great point. She does also point out that being a team player with problem solving is important to being this person who figures things out. For example, making sure that your boss looks good and not taking a strategy to overshadow them. And this obviously can be very tricky. What are your thoughts on this?
She's right. Personally, my approach with any job is to understand my role within that organization and prioritize the overall mission and success of the team while highlighting the leader that I support. Being someone who is comfortable working behind the scenes has allowed me to make my bosses look good, complement their styles, and contribute to their overall success. Interestingly, I found that this approach not only benefited those that I worked for, but it also enhanced my professional reputation. You don't have to be in the light to be seen.
Wow. Well, that leads to something else that I love. I always love a good Mark Twain insight. And here's one: the solution to our water problem is more rain. Sometimes the solution is much clearer than the path to the practical outcome that you actually want. And as an example, let's say that an organizational leader who's listening to this podcast really wants to find more invaluable problem solvers for their organization. Where do they start in this search to find someone like you?
First, broaden your approach to reviewing applications. Place less emphasis on specific work experience and prioritize the skills and characteristics that are necessary for the job. In my hiring experience, I ask our recruiters to send me all of the applications, and I personally review them to ensure a comprehensive evaluation. While this is time consuming, I always try to remember that it's easier to teach someone how to do a task than to develop their critical thinking and problem solving skills. So that's step one. Make sure you're looking at all the candidates. Step two, think about the interviews. And this is key. During the interviews, delve into the candidate's problem solving capabilities by asking detailed questions. Rather than simply inquiring, tell me about a problem you were successful in solving, break down the question using the STAR framework. So S, set the stage by asking candidates to describe a specific problem they encountered. See how the candidate evaluated the situation and identified the problem. T, talk about the desired outcome that they aim to achieve through problem solving. Think about how the candidate approached identifying the solution and the intended outcomes. How many potential solutions were identified? How were they socialized? Did the candidate identify unintentional consequences of their solution? A, analyze their approach and action plan, including the alternatives they considered, the required resources of their solutions, and the challenges they faced. Ask yourself, would the candidate's approaches and way of thinking work in your organizational culture or on your team? R, reflect on their communication and collaboration skills throughout the entire problem-solving process, including how effectively they conveyed information, sought input, and engaged stakeholders. At each stage, challenge the candidate by asking follow-up questions like why and how to gauge their critical thinking and decision-making rationale. By taking the time to do this, you can gain valuable insights into a candidate's problem-solving abilities and identify individuals who have the potential to be star employees, no pun intended.
I will link to this information, if that's okay with you, in the show notes so that anybody listening to this can go back and see that step by step, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, let's say that now you have identified a candidate, someone like you, Nisha. What does it take to convince a proactive problem solver to join a new organization? If someone is motivated by problem solving and has a background doing it, what makes a new organization or division or department attractive?
To convince a proactive problem solver to join a new organization, it's crucial to showcase an environment that embraces creative thinking and innovation. Highlight how the organization values and supports individuals who take initiative, think critically, and proactively address challenges. Emphasize opportunities for professional growth and development. It's important to demonstrate a commitment to excellence and a culture that welcomes new ideas and approaches. Conversely, if the organization is resistant to change or stifled by bureaucracy, it may not be the right fit for someone driven by problem solving, and fit is everything.
Let's say that an organizational leader does not feel like they're seeing very much proactive problem solving going on around them, but they want to increase this from their current team. What's your advice on developing existing team members into proactive, invaluable problem solvers?
This is challenging. I suggest they start with a thorough evaluation of the team's environment. Assess whether the individuals are being set up and encouraged to identify and solve problems. If not, it's crucial to address this gap first. However, if the answer is yes, your focus should shift to assessing both the skill and the will of each team member. First, determine whether they possess the necessary skills to effectively solve problems. This will help to identify any areas where additional training or support may be needed. Secondly, evaluate their level of desire or motivation to tackle problems proactively. This is their will. Using this information, leaders can tailor their approach accordingly to foster each individual's growth and coach them into problem solvers. As leaders, it's important that we remember everyone has unique problem-solving styles and skills. So be sure to celebrate their strengths and empower them to utilize their inherent abilities.
Great insights and advice. Now for another quote from one of my favorite nonfiction authors, who in this case is still alive and very much active in his field and profession. This is Rory Sutherland. He's a London, UK-based writer and innovation expert. I think his books are really fascinating. This quote is from his book, Alchemy, The Surprising Power of Ideas That Don't Make Sense. He says, it is much easier for a person to be fired for being illogical than it is for being unimaginative. The fatal issue is that logic always gets you exactly the same place as your competitors. He is making the case for really utilizing imagination and innovation to come up with really great solutions. But he says the bigger the organization, the less tolerance it will have for innovation. The bigger it becomes, the more established protocol keeps getting tied to the safest, least imaginative, least risky solution. And this is exactly why big companies like Microsoft so often can't seem to develop really innovative new systems like ChatGPT. They have to go out and externally buy or fund them outside of their bureaucracy. So how does someone who uses imagination and its associated risks to try to solve problems through innovation in big organizations do it without getting fired when something doesn't work in the end, but yet could still be a good learning opportunity or even a good jumping off point for an even better solution that's still just up ahead?
I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to this challenge. Navigating it in a large organization requires a calculated risk, and it varies by industry. Here's how I tactfully and strategically address this issue in my role at a large academic medical center. First, I thoroughly understand our organization's culture and its tolerance for risk and innovation. By recognizing these boundaries and constraints, I can gradually push those boundaries to expand them over time. It's a slow process, and you don't want to push too hard too fast. Also, I start by initiating small scale pilots of new solutions before asking to implement them system wide. These pilots provide tangible results that can be showcased to gain support and build momentum. And if a pilot doesn't yield the desired outcomes, which happens, it becomes a valuable learning opportunity to reevaluate and refine the approach. Additionally, I actively seek allies and build networks within the organization. You can't do this alone. By connecting with like minded individuals and across teams, you're able to tap into collective knowledge, resources, and influence, which strengthens the impact of innovative ideas. And like with everything, communication is vital. Presenting ideas effectively is as important as finding the solution. I usually tailor my approach to align with the thinking and goals of my audience, then frame these ideas within the context of evidence, data, and case studies. It's really important to acknowledge that this journey is not without its challenges. Implementing innovation in a large organization can be daunting and even scary at times, and it's often at snail speed. However, by focusing on the positive outcomes and the potential for meaningful impact, I overcome most of my fears that may arise and am able to continue to push forward.
So that kind of leads into trust. What place does trust building play in problem solving based on your personal experiences?
Trust building has played a crucial role in my personal experiences with problem solving. It sets the stage for success. Based on my own experiences, I've noticed a stark contrast in my approach and mindset. In teams where trust exists, I feel more comfortable expressing my creativity, engaging wholeheartedly, and taking calculated risks. Trust empowers me to be bold, knowing that my leaders will have my back and will support both my victories and potential setbacks. Derek, trust is not just a nice to have, but it's a fundamental need.
What communication strategies have served you best as you problem solve?
Many different strategies, and often it depends on the team and the specific issue at hand. But here are some that are almost always used. Active listening. This is a way to learn more about the situation and learn more about what people have experienced and are desiring. When problem solving, it's more often than not that something is affecting a large number of people in different ways. Active listening helps you discover perspectives and identify solutions you normally wouldn't see alone. Clear and concise messaging. I emphasize clear and concise communication through various channels, including verbal, written, and visual. Over communicating by presenting information in different ways ensures better understanding because we all have different learning styles. Targeted communication. I make a conscious effort to connect one-on-one with those most affected by what I am working on, and to have a natural cadence of communication with groups that are along the journey with me. And lastly, empathetic communication. I always try to show understanding towards others' perspectives and emotions. It's important to actively acknowledge others' feelings and seek to understand their point of view. This is what creates trust and a safe space for dialogue. But most importantly, I advise your listeners to be adaptable. The same strategies and styles won't always work for everyone and every problem. Be willing to flex as needed to get the best outcome.
Once again, great insights. We're getting close to the end of our interview on this podcast episode. And so one question I really want to hear your answer on is, what is one problem that you've been a part of problem solving for and where the end result was one that you were particularly proud of?
In my current role as Director of Wellness in the UAB Medicine Office of Wellness, employee well-being is my top priority. In recent years, we have seen suicide rates increase, and although they have leveled out some, this is still a major concern for us working in higher education and in the medical field, where stresses and stakes are high. To tackle this issue, I collaborated with two of our other directors, the Director of Student Counseling Services and the Director of our EAP. Together, we brainstormed ways to provide education to individuals on how to identify when someone is in distress and how to ensure they know about the available resources for themselves or to guide someone in need. During our discussions, we realized that UAB and UAB Medicine have numerous valuable resources for employee well-being, including various educational platforms that were not being fully utilized. Leveraging our understanding of the human desire for recognition, we developed a coordinated mental health badging system. We identified all the existing education platforms and organized them into different levels and tracks to meet the needs of our diverse enterprise. For example, the training for a student are different than the trainings for a manager, which are different from trainings for staff. We also took the time to incorporate this into our existing learning systems to take out the administrative burden for us to maintain this program and to the individuals who will engage. This is an example of us thinking upstream and problem solving before it even happens. So how does this badging system work? Individuals complete different levels of training. They earn a badge to put in their email signatures and essentially a certificate that identifies them as mental health advocates. The response has been remarkable. We have seen a tremendous increase in individuals signing up for mental health trainings, which means they're learning how to detect distress. They're becoming more empathetic and compassionate to people struggling, and they know what resources we have available. And all three of us are really excited to be able to create a campus culture that recognizes and embraces mental health. What makes me particularly proud of this achievement is the way it combined my problem-solving and execution skills with my deep passion for people. Through collaboration, creativity, and resourcefulness, the three of us were able to address a pressing issue without requiring additional resources, which is a major win in an academic medical center.
Well, we have all been touched by suicide, so thank you for your work on doing everything possible to bring that to the forefront and prevent it. Here we are, Nisha. We're at the end of our interview, but what did I fail to ask you that I should have? And is there anything else that you would like to add?
Derek, I've truly enjoyed our conversation, and you've covered everything wonderfully. And you've shared many of your favorite quotes. So to wrap up, I'd like to share a quote that embodies my leadership philosophy. If you don't know Brené Brown, you're missing out. And she once said, "I define a leader as anyone who takes responsibility for finding potential in people and processes, and who have the courage to develop that potential." This quote resonates with me because it reminds us to see problems as possibilities. By embracing this philosophy, we can uncover untapped potential and foster positive change.
For the convenience of those listening, we will post links to various resources discussed in this episode in the show notes at brainchatterpodcast.com. I will also post Nisha's LinkedIn account so that you can connect with her if you'd like to do so. Thank you for your valuable time and insights, Nisha. This has been great. I really appreciate everything you offered.
It has been my pleasure, and I look forward to connecting with your listeners.
Brain Chatter is a production of Ken Chapman & Associates Incorporated. We assist clients across North America and beyond with leadership development, corporate culture transformation initiatives, behavior-based professional development for health and safety issues, individual and team assessments, conflict and performance management, succession planning, and team building, making a difference in organizations and individuals' lives for over 40 years. Learn more at leaderscode.com. Please consider ranking and reviewing us wherever you listen to podcasts. The more reviews or rankings we receive, the more the algorithms recommend us to new listeners. For a weekly leadership quote, follow Ken Chapman & Associates, Inc. on Facebook or LinkedIn, or The Leaders Code on Instagram or Twitter. Thank you for your valuable time.